Okay, and so this will be available on the library's YouTube channel probably later today or tomorrow, as will all of the workshops that we're doing. So I'm just going to shut the door really quick. Will your PowerPoint? Okay. Will your PowerPoint also be available? There's really nothing on the PowerPoint. It's just kind of an intro slide. Okay. So what we're going to be doing today is talking about some of the top keyboard shortcuts. We're going to talk about the different features in each of the tabs that are appear in Microsoft Word, in Excel, and in PowerPoint. And I'm also going to talk about different save as options and how to protect your documents. So I have printouts of the handouts that we're going to be going through today. These are specific to Word, but the handouts are also available online at this link so that you can access them in the long term. So just take one handout. There's 2 different ones going around, so just pass them. We have trouble hearing. Okay. Let me see if I can adjust my audio really quick. Okay, well, the volume's up as high as it can go, so I can try just to talk louder. Is that working any better? Okay, well, let's just go ahead and get started. What we're going to talk about first is, oh, yes, sorry, is Microsoft Word. Is it shared now? Okay, let's see.
Oh, there we go. Now it is.
Okay, so what we're going to be focusing on first is Microsoft Word. I have a sample document here that is kind of like potentially what a dissertation or a thesis document would look like. We're just going to use this to talk about some of the tools and some of the features that Microsoft Word offers you. So I'm just going to scroll down a bit and we're going to go through some of these keyboard shortcuts. Did everyone get a handout that came in? We're still working through. Okay. So one of my favorite keyboard shortcuts within Word is the copy, cut, and paste. So I know that some of this is going to be introductory, but I just want to make sure that you all know how to do this. So whenever you're in Word, Excel, or PowerPoint, you can highlight anything. You can hit Control-C to copy it, and then you can hit Control-V to paste it. You can also then hit Control-Z on your keyboard, and that will delete or undo your action. Did everyone get one? Okay. So next, you can change the kind of format of your text by highlighting it. You can do Control-B to bold it. You can do Control-I to italicize, and then you can do Control-U to underline. So on your handout, I have the shortcuts for the PC as well as shortcuts for Mac. So they're very similar. Usually Control is replaced with Command. Another option, depending on the type of text that you're trying to insert, you might need to do some superscript, especially if you're doing equations or if you're trying to do an elevated number. So an easy way to do that, you can always start at the Home tab in Microsoft Word, and we can't zoom into the ribbon at the top, but there's the superscript option and the subscript, so the lowered option. You can click those and it'll automatically do that for you, but you can also use a shortcut. So to do a superscript, you would hit Control-Shift+, and then you could type your number, you could type a little word, whatever you want. To get out of superscript or subscript, you would just push that same shortcut again, and it'll take you back to your regular level of text. So sometimes when you're working in Word, you might want to highlight something, and I know that when I'm using a mouse or a trackpad, sometimes it's difficult to highlight exactly what you want. Things can get a little bit tricky. So there's some keyboard shortcuts you can use for that. If you hold down Control on a PC or Command on a Mac and click somewhere in a sentence, it will highlight that entire sentence for you. Similarly, if you place your cursor where you want the highlight to start, hold down Shift, and then click where you want the highlight to end, you'll automatically highlight that entire section of text. Now, when we're working with lists, it can be helpful to know a little bit more about some of the options in the paragraph section of your Home tab. So you can always start a new list by creating your new text, and then up at the top you can choose bulleted lists, you can choose numbered lists, but what you might be interested in doing is clicking on something that says multi-level list. If you click this, you can define a new list style. You can create your own mix of a list. Maybe within your own discipline, there's certain settings that you need to have where they want numbers first, then Roman numerals, then lowercase letters. You can define that. If you want to add on to a list, you can always just hit Enter. It'll continue the list. And you can hit Tab to keep progressing through the different parts of that list. Now let's say I have this text, which right now is a sub-level under methods. I can always change that level up at the top by using one of the decrease indent buttons. But on my keyboard, I can also hit Shift Tab. Well, hold on, let me go back. If I click to the beginning of that item, of that text, if I hit Shift Tab, it will reverse that indent automatically. You may also want to insert hyperlinks really quickly. Just highlight your text by double-clicking or using one of those shortcuts and hit Control-K. That will bring up the Insert Hyperlink window, and you can paste that there and easily change the text to display. So when you're working in a Microsoft product, you can link to a web page, but if you click on email address, you can also tell it to send, to make that hyperlink direct you to a specific email, and even put in a specific subject line if you choose to do that. Any questions about some of those really quick keyboard shortcuts? Okay, so I know that you all probably know how to change the font and change the size. We're not going to focus on that. But you might be interested, if you haven't used it before, in the Find and Replace feature. So this is often linked to in the ribbon, but you can always get there by hitting Control or Command F on your keyboard. The Find and Replace lets you type in a word or a sentence, and it'll show you where it appears within your document. Within this search box, and I know it's difficult for you to see, but if you click the down arrow, you can say Replace. Now this will let me say, anytime that chapter appears, maybe I want to replace it with a different word. Maybe I'll just say chapters, just to stay consistent. I can say Find Next. So there's my second appearance of chapter. I can say Replace. I could even say Replace All, and it'll make all of those changes that I specified. This is especially helpful if you're navigating between different citation formats, because some want a single space after a period, some want a double space. So you could have Word find any instances of double space after a period and replace it with a single one, so that you're going through by yourself to do that. So the next tab that I want to point out really quick is the Layout tab. The Layout tab is where you can change your margins, you can change your orientation. It's also where you can add columns if you choose to. You can highlight any text that you're interested in, click on the columns icon and say 2, 3, however many you want. Once you do that, you can put your text into columns, which can help organize lists and help you present information in a slightly different way. Now, if we navigate to the Insert tab, there's a few other options that we can use. We can insert a blank page if we choose to. We can insert pictures, we can insert shapes, we can insert charts, headers, footers. We can insert the date and time if we chose to. But I want to insert a picture and show you something that can be helpful to keep in mind. I'm going to do an online picture just so that I didn't have to download anything. We're just going to put in a picture of an apple. Now, when you first insert an image, the image is very stagnant. You don't have much control over what you can do with it. So when you're putting charts into your Word document, if you're putting pictures of graphs, you can change some of the settings so you can move it around. If you click to make sure that the image is selected, you'll see that a new tab named Format appeared. What we want to do is click on Position under Arrange and select one of the text wrapping options. I like the text wrapping with the picture in the left with square text wrapping. Once I select that, I can resize the image, and now this will let me move the image wherever I want it on the page because I selected text wrapping. Without that selection, the image stays where you put it, and you can really only move it with Enter or with Backspace. You can also, from the Arrange section of the tab, you can choose to align your image in the center or in the middle of your document. So that's an easy way to put an image where you want it. Okay, so now I want to talk about something that I think will be the most useful, what I'm seeing as the most useful takeaway from this session, is how to use section breaks in Word to control the headers, footers, and page numbers, so you can do different page numbers on different pages, which I know is a requirement for theses and dissertations. These instructions are spelled out on the handout that I gave you, but I want to go through it really quick. It's a handout that has the numbers 2 and 3. So when we want to specify different page numbers or different headers and footers throughout the document, we first need to navigate to the View tab and click on Draft. This changes our layout so that the page looks slightly different and it's easier to see. So I have right now some unnecessary section breaks in here, so I'm going to delete those. The draft shows us, when we enter in these section breaks, it shows us what they look like. So it's easier to make changes here than when we're in the print layout view, which looks better. So we'll first want to insert a section break at the first spot where we want to break up our document. So I'm going to put a section break after my title page. So I'm going to click where I want it. I'm going to navigate to the Layout tab, click on Breaks, and under Section Breaks, click on Next Page. Now, when I do that, it'll automatically insert a blank page. But what we can do, we see our cursor is directly below Section Break. We hit the Delete button on our keyboard until that next section is right below. That removes that blank page without having any concern about deleting that section break. Now let's say I want to insert a section break under acknowledgements. I would do the same thing, Layout, Breaks, Section Breaks, Next Page. Delete that as well. And maybe I want one under the table of contents to break up that from the main body of my dissertation. And I'll delete all of those extra spaces. Once I'm done with that, I'll navigate back to the View tab and go back to Print Layout. So now we're back on the normal view for our document. So to insert page numbers, we're going to do this focusing on page numbers in the footer, but these instructions will mean the same thing. You can do it for header as well. Just replace header with footer. Yes?
Quick question on that. So if you're looking at the section breaks, so let's say you had your first section and that's portrait, could you make does the portrait like apply to all the sections, or does the section break allow you to put a landscape page in the middle for charts?
I believe the section break should allow you to do that. I didn't check it with changing the charts, but that's the purpose of those breaks.
Okay.
And so I think it should let you do that, and we can try that after we do the page numbers.
Okay, thank you.
I'm hoping that that's the purpose of the section breaks.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we'll scroll up to where we want to put our first different set of page numbers in, which was directly below the title page. So this in our instance is the copyright page. So to do that, we'll click on this page, we'll navigate to the Insert tab, we'll say Footer, and we'll say Edit the Footer. We do this just so that it pulls up this window. We can see that it says Same as Previous, and up at the top in the Design tab under Navigation, Link to Previous is highlighted. This means that the footer on this page is linking back to the page before it. So if we click that, it removes that connection. So now, from this Design tab, we can click Page Number, bottom of the page, and choose our design option. Now this still starts us at number 2. So to change that, we just highlight that page number, go back up to the page number icon under Header and Footer, and click Format Page Numbers. And I know this is super small, but this is where you can choose your number format. If you want Roman numerals, if you want letters, if you want lowercase, uppercase. So we'll do uppercase letters. And if we want this to start at number 1, an I, or the letter A, we'll click Start At. It'll default to the first item in that list, but we could change it if we wanted to. And we'll say OK. And if we scroll up to our title page, we can see there's no page number. And as we scroll down, we can see that there is a page number on the dissertation authorization page. And now remember, the abstract page, we put a page break right before that as well. So we could change that if we chose to. But let's say we want to keep this all the same, but we want to change the page numbers on our table of contents, which has a lovely apple picture in the middle of it now. We would click down into the footer for the table of contents, uncheck the link to previous box, highlight that page number, go page numbers, format, choose a different option, maybe lowercase Roman numerals, and hit OK. And since we unchecked that link to previous, the page numbers on this page are different than the page numbers on the previous one. We could then do the same thing with our first page of our text. We can click there, unlink it, highlight. Maybe we still want these numbers, but we could say start at number 1. And you can do that to put page numbers in the footer or in the header. Now let's say you want to add a different header. There's a couple of options to do that. I've spelled them out on that handout. Depending on what you need to do, and if you're wanting a unique first page, you might need to put in another section break to accomplish that. So let's test what you had said to see if we insert a new page, if it'll let us change the orientation. So I'm going to zoom out just so we can see this a little bit better. Maybe not that much. But we know there was a section break. If we go under View and Draft, we know that there's a section break between or right after the title page. So let's see if we can, just to make things easy, I'm going to put a section break at the end of our text so that we have a blank page there. And let's see if this blank page, if I can change the orientation without changing the whole document. Yes. So if you put a section break, you can then change the orientation, and then you would put a section break at the end of that to restart back to like a portrait page.
Okay, yeah, someone did it for me, and so I have it on my to-do list, but I was like,
how do I do that if I want to? Yeah. So the section breaks before and after a page will let you change or have unique page numbers, headers, footers, as well as orientations for the pages. Any other questions on how to do that within Microsoft Word? Okay, so I'm going to zoom in just so we have a single page. A couple of things that you might also want to consider adding to your document, depending on what you're doing, is if we come up to the Design tab, you can add watermarks if you chose to. So if you're working on a draft and you want to maybe upload it online so other people can read it, but you want that watermark stuck there, you can choose one of their preset ones. You can also customize it by adding a picture or adding whatever text you want to add. And you can always do more with Word. You can change the color of the background if you chose to, but I think that that's probably less effective for the types of things that you all are going to be doing. If we go under the file option, I'm just going to move this. There's a few other things that we can do. You can choose to protect your Word document or Excel spreadsheet or PowerPoint presentation by encrypting with a password or restricting access. So if you're sharing something, if you're collecting data and you need to protect it, you can encrypt the specific file to potentially meet the Institutional Review Board research requirements. Another option, especially if you're considering publication, is they usually ask you to ensure that your document is 100% anonymous. That includes more than just making sure your name isn't mentioned on the title page. One way to do that is under Inspect Document. If you click Check for Issues and click on Inspect Document and say yes, it'll run a test and it'll tell you whether the document properties and personal information is included. So if we hit Inspect, we can see that our document does have information about who the author is. We could remove that, and now our document is 100% anonymous. So if you're thinking about publishing anything and it's undergoing anonymous peer review, that's a feature that you want to make sure you use. Okay, so let's go ahead and close out of Microsoft Word and jump into Excel. So this is just kind of a fake spreadsheet, just so I can show you some of the features that Excel has. As you all probably know, you can change the size of columns or rows just by dragging and grabbing. If we scroll down and click into a cell, we could auto sum that cell by clicking here and going up to the top and hitting something that says auto sum under editing. That will automatically, Excel will identify the range of values that we want to add together. We would hit enter and it would automatically do that for us.
Do that one more time.
Yes, so you just click in the cell where you want that equation to go, and then up at the top under editing, auto sum is one of the features. So you would just click that. It will auto populate what it believes to be the range of cells you want to add together, and then you just hit enter. It'll run that equation or run that formula. It has auto options for average, counting, identifying the maximum value, as well as identifying the minimum value. One other function or formula that I really like is the count if formula. That allows you to use Excel to identify how many times certain words or phrases appear. So if we do enter and we say count if, parenthesis, we'll do the range of A for state. So we'll say A2 through A28. We'll type that range, we'll put a comma, and then we'll identify the word that we want Excel to look for. So we'll do parenthesis or quotation mark, and we'll say Delaware, quotation mark, end parenthesis. And Delaware appears within that column specifically 12 times. So when you're in Word and you do Control Find for a word, it'll tell you how many times it appears. Excel doesn't do that automatically. You have to use a function to identify how many times a term appears. And that's the count if function.
Can you question?
Yeah.
Can you do the same thing in Word? Let's say you have a document and you're looking for the word obscure.
Yes.
And you have 500 pages. Will it count obscure?
It will it will count it if you do the control find and type in that word into that
So
search
that's how
box.
you do it.
That's how you do it in Word. Yeah. So this is the way to do it in Excel.
Got it.
You can do control find in Excel for a specific word like Delaware, but it doesn't automatically count the number of times it appears. You can say find all, and it does say 13 cells. So it gives you a little bit, but doing that count if lets you specify kind of within a range, and it just gives you a little bit more control instead of working and relying on the find box. So in Excel, you all probably have seen this before, but if you navigate to the page layout tab, that's where you can change the margins. You can change the print area if this is something that you're trying to print and share with others. You can also, if you go to the Home tab, you can insert, you can remove different columns or rows. If you're on a PC, you can also apply conditional formatting from here as well. What conditional formatting will let you do is specify how you want specific data to appear. So if we click conditional formatting, we can set rules for highlighting certain cells, changing the color of certain cells, hiding certain cells, etc. You can also format your data automatically as a table, which is really handy, especially if you're trying to present this data in a specific way. From the Home tab, if you click on, if you're in the Styles section, if you click Format as Table, you can choose the appearance that you want. It'll automatically make an assumption about the data you want to include in this table. If you have headers, make sure that that box is checked, and then click OK. One of the benefits of formatting your data as a table is that it gives you some automatic options that allow you to hide or show certain data. So since we formatted this as a table, our first column, state, we can check the drop down and say only show me data that's from Delaware. And that will hide all of the other data options. So formatting as a table gives you a little bit more presentation abilities for sharing your data.
But I noticed it doesn't change your auto sum.
No, and it's possible because we can see here that the auto sum was not included in that formatting of the table. So if we had extended it down to include those rows, it would change it as we went through. If we go under the View tab, this is where you can freeze or unfreeze some of your columns and rows. That's helpful if you have a lot of rows and you want to be able to see your headers as you scroll. So under View, under the Window section, if you choose Freeze Panes, you can freeze just the top row so that you can scroll down and see your headers regardless of how far down you go. You can also, let's say we want to be able to see our header, but we also want to be able to see, if we were to continue scrolling to the right, the state column. We would click in this case, in cell B2, click on Freeze Panes. We're going to unfreeze what we did, and then we're just going to click the first option for Freeze Panes. What that's going to do is it's going to freeze as we scroll up and down, and it's going to freeze as we scroll to the right. Now, a lot of these things that I'm showing you in Excel are more for presentation purposes. If you're working with raw data, you may not be doing the conditional formatting or the formatting as a table. This is more so just to make these spreadsheets a little bit more accessible and easier to see visually. In Excel, you can also add new sheets if you choose to. At the bottom of any spreadsheet, there's the plus sign. You can click that to add a new sheet. If you right-click where it says the name of the sheet, you can also rename that if you need to. So we could call this Sheet A instead of Sheet 2. It does limit the number of characters that you can enter, so just keep that in mind if you are naming your sheets.
It's quite a bit, though.
Yeah. Okay. One of the other options that you might be interested in is splitting your columns into multiple columns. One way to do that is with the text to columns feature. So right now our salesperson data, the first names and the last names are in the same column. So when you're trying to sort data, that makes it very difficult to have more than one value, especially if it's a name in a single column. So maybe we want a last name and a first name column. So to do that, we'll need to go under the Data tab, and we can see that there's a Text to Columns button. What I like to do is, I know I want salesperson to break up into 2 columns, so I'm going to add, by clicking on C, right-clicking and hitting Insert, a couple of extra columns between there and my other data, because when I do text to columns, it will replace what's in that next column. So I want to make sure I don't lose any data. So I'll just highlight the salesperson column by clicking on B. I'll click Text to Columns. You can choose a few different options, but we're going to say we want to split the data and make it, we want to split it based on the appearance of a certain character. So we're going to say delimited. We're going to hit Next, and we're going to say, I want you to break up this column when you see a space, since that's currently what we have between the first name and the last name. Depending on the data that you're working with in Excel, you can have a delimiter based, or that's looking for a tab, that's splitting data based on a semicolon, a comma, a space. If you even check the box Other, you could specify something else. Maybe your data is separated with a dash. You could break it up based on that, whatever you're using. But we know we're using a space because we can see that. We'll hit Next, we'll hit Finish, and we'll just go ahead and do that. And there we go. Using that text to columns, it broke up our data. I'm going to delete that blank column. And now we could sort by last name. Since we formatted this as a table, we can click that down arrow and we can sort A to Z, Z to A, some other sort options as well.
And when you format it as a table, it saves the row as one. So when you sort, it sorts the whole row.
Exactly. When you format as a table, like you said, it automatically saves everything as one. So when you sort one column, it sorts everything. If this wasn't formatted as a table, and we were just trying to sort using the general data sort option, we have to make sure the whole table was highlighted. Otherwise, one column would shift and all the others would stay. So that's one of the benefits of formatting as a table. And if we didn't want this formatting to stay this way, we could always go back to the Home tab, and we could highlight this and go under Format as a Table. And I believe that we can remove that formatting by going under Conditional Formatting and clearing those rules from that table. Or no, that's not how you do it. Okay, well, I know that there's a way, I didn't make a note specifically how to do that. But there is an option to do that if you chose to. And that's one of the benefits of using some of these Microsoft products, is that if you don't know how to do something, you can often just Google how to do it. And they have some very, very good help documentation through their own website, through the Microsoft website, as well as some other help pages. Can provide you with some information on how to do some of these things that you might not know how to do.
Are you going to talk about charts or anything today?
Yes. So we have this formatted as a table. Whether or not it's formatted as a table, we can still insert a chart. So I'm going to highlight all of my data, and I'm going to go under the Insert tab, and there's a few different charts we can add. I'm going to do some basic ones first, then we'll jump into a pivot table really quick. So Excel tries to provide some recommendations. So if you click under the Insert tab when all of your data is selected under Charts, you can click Recommended Charts, and it'll try to give you what they think are the best charts to use. So you can take those recommendations if you choose to, or you can choose your own chart type if you knew exactly what you wanted, like a bar chart, a line graph, etc. we're just going to choose a clustered column and hit OK. So right now we can see from this chart that it is not 100% correct because we probably do not want the hire date to be on the same axis as the sales. So if we wanted to change this chart, there's a few different options. So if we click on the chart, we can see there's like a little funnel button. It says chart filters. If we click on that, a little box will pop up, and we can come over here and uncheck for hire date and hit apply. So now this looks like a more relevant chart, right? So whenever you're using Excel to make charts for you, it's probably not going to be perfect the first time. I said that Microsoft products are helpful, but their downfall is they try to anticipate what you want, and more often than not, they're not right. They don't understand what you want, so you have to do a bit of editing. You can do that clicking the funnel under the different values if you chose to. You can also, if you go under names, you can change maybe how the categories appear. So right now we have it broken down by the people's first names in our different columns there on the x-axis. But maybe we want it broken down by state. So if we choose column A, I don't know why we would want that, but now we could see a random state instead of the person's name. But we'll go back to first names just so we can see that. Now, if we wanted to change how this chart was displayed, what we can do up at the top, when we added a chart, it opened this design tab. We can switch the row and the column if we chose to. So this broke it up a little bit differently. But if we go under change chart type, we can do that as well. Under add chart element, that's where you can add the different titles. You could add a legend. You could add grid lines if you wanted to do that.
I have a quick question about,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe you have something about it later, but I find the error bar option in Excel to be really bizarre.
Yes.
Is there an easy way to edit those without entering each individual data point?
Not that I know of. I mean, I really haven't looked into the error bars, but
that's okay.
That's one of the difficulties of the Excel charts.
I'll try to look at some videos, because yeah, it gives you a standard deviation, but it's a standard deviation for the whole data set instead of like, you know.
Exactly what you want.
Stupid.
Yeah, not exactly what you're looking for. Yeah. But hopefully there's some documentation online to help with that.
I just was curious.
Yeah. Now on this chart, we can also right click, and that's where we have some more options as well. This is where we could change the chart type to. Once we create a chart, if we click on it and hit Control-C, we can then paste it somewhere else. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to jump into PowerPoint really quick. You could paste this in Word, but you could also put it in PowerPoint. Just click where you want it, and you would hit Control-V. We didn't have a title or anything, so nothing got pasted over, but you can easily move things from one Microsoft product to another. Now we're not going to talk, I'm just going to delete this, too much about pivot tables today. But a pivot table allows you to do a bit more organizing of your data. It allows you to combine your data in ways that are not possible when you're using a standard chart. So we'll highlight all of our data. We'll go under data, or we'll go under insert, and we'll click on pivot table. Right now, it's going to give you some options for where you want your pivot table to appear. We're going to say a new worksheet, which is going to create a new sheet at the bottom, and we're going to hit OK. So right now, we just have a blank table. I know it's very small. We can't zoom in on this, but we have different pivot table fields. So we can break up our data a little bit differently using this. So maybe what we want to do is we want to examine whether or not there's a relationship between the average sales by each quarter in the state that the person worked in or lives in. So we could click on state. Maybe we want state in the column. And then we want sales Q1 in the rows. We'll just do Q1 for now. So right now, we can see that this pivot table doesn't look like anything, right? When we're putting this in the row. One of the things with pivot tables is you really don't know what it's going to look like until you start adding these options. So sales Q1 might fit better in values. But right now, this is giving us a count, right? We're not interested in the number of sales that occurred from each state. To change that value, if you click on count of sales within that values, you can click on value field settings. This is where you can specify how you want that data to appear. So remember, we had said maybe the average of sales based on that state. If we choose average and hit OK, now we can see that in Delaware, in Q1, their average sales were 764, and in Pennsylvania, their average sales were 869. We could do that same thing with sales Q2 by dragging that down into the values and changing that as well. So we'll do value field, we'll say average, and now we can see our chart looks a bit different. We had a blank value within our table, but we can see that in Delaware in Q1, their average sales were 764. They increased in Q2, whereas in Pennsylvania, they were higher in Q1 than in Q2. You can do very similar things, especially if your data is already formatted as a table. You could run formulas and functions to generate this, but a pivot table generates it in a very quick way. It gives you a bit more control.
I find it flexible too, so you can kind of mess around with where you want the values. It's
Exactly.
easier to see.
Definitely. I'm just going to remove this really quick. What we can also then do, pivot tables give you the option to do a filter. And so if we click on hire date and drag that into the filter option, we can say, select multiple items, maybe only show me the people who started working, their average sales, for people who started working in 1998 and 1999. So we can do filters to change how our data appears as well. If we wanted to, we could then create a chart by clicking Pivot Chart under Tools. I guess those people are only in Delaware, the individuals who worked in those dates. We'll expand that. If we click Pivot Chart, we can create a chart that will display our data specifically from the pivot table. There's a few different options, very similar to what you could get with a normal data table, but it'll be based on the values you're creating with that pivot table. Any questions about Excel before we move on to PowerPoint for the last few minutes? Okay. So when you're working in PowerPoint, usually it's best, and it's really based on what you're attempting to do with your presentation, but just kind of some words of advice. Try to keep the amount of text you're using very minimal. Don't use text that's super small so people can't read it. Don't put text, or make sure that all of your slides you're not reading word for word, just for some, make sure your presentations are more entertaining. Before you start creating a presentation, it can be helpful to make sure that all of your slides have the formatting you want automatically. The way to do that is from the View tab, under the Master Views, is to go under Slide Master. Slide Master gives you, I'm going to try to arrange this so you can see, options to automatically set and change the font, the style, the design across all of your slides at once. So I don't know about you, but there's times where I've started doing a presentation and I've had it as one font, and then as I get through, I realize that font is just not working, maybe the size is wrong, and then I'm like, well, if I try to change the size on this one slide, it'll be different on all the other ones, so all the consistency will be out the window. Slide Master lets you set that across all of the slides and apply it.
Can you edit this master after you've already
Yes.
begun a presentation?
Yes, and then you can hit, I mean, I don't have anything in my sample right now.
Fine, but
Yeah, but we can click, so we have the title slide, the fake one. If we click on that, we can go under home, we can change the font. Let's do Arial, and maybe we want it to be red for some reason. And then we want the shape to be outlined in green. We could then go through and change the different slides because you'll have different options based on the type of slide you want to insert. Once you're done, you'll just hit Close Master View. And it didn't change the text here for some reason to red, but it changed the box. So we need to go back and figure out why that's not working under the view. And I can maybe get there once the Zoom drop down disappears. We could go back to the slide master and say, maybe I'm on a different title slide. Maybe I'm on this one, and do some of those changes. This is really helpful, like I said, if you need to change the size or the font and you want it consistent. Depending on the type of presentation that you're doing, maybe you are wanting to use a very similar format or design across multiple presentations. You're making some unique changes that you want to come back to. You can always go, and this works the same in Word, in PowerPoint, or in Excel. If you click File and go under Save As and click on Browse, you can choose a file type that's called PowerPoint template. And once you choose this, it will let you reopen that page with the exact same settings that you had, the same font, the same format. Maybe you have specific slides that you use in every type of presentation you're making. This can be helpful if you're making a poster for a conference. You can set a template, so you can just open that up, save it as whatever you want, and it'll keep everything the way you've had it. So it allows you to have consistency across documents, across presentations. If we go under the Design tab, this is where you could choose, how you want your presentation to look. But if you don't want to use one of their design options, you can create your own. You can maybe change your own background color. You can do things like that. And then you could save that as a theme that you could then apply to other presentations too. Some of the PowerPoint themes are good, some of them not so much. So you might want to make your own if you're wanting to get away from maybe the white or just a dark background.
Sometimes you can actually edit their themes too.
Yes.
And save them differently, which I've done.
Yes, because sometimes their colors or their fonts aren't exactly what you want. So if we apply a theme, like this purple one, we could then also go under Slide Master and edit it there too. So we could start with this and make changes based on what we're hoping for.
And you can even change the shape in the corner or whatever. Yeah.
Yes.
It gives you a lot of power.
A lot of options. So I'm going to show you, we inserted a picture in Word. You do it the same way in PowerPoint, but I want to show you, PowerPoint gives you a few different options too. So let's see, maybe I want lots of pictures of apples. We're going to insert all of those. Now, when you're in PowerPoint, you might want your pictures to do different things. So right now, this realistic looking apple is behind this fake looking apple. So maybe we want to make sure that this realistic looking apple is layered on top of all of the other images. We don't want it to be hidden. To do that, we would click on that image and it'll open a Format tab. Over here on the right, under Arrange, we can say, I want to bring this image forward. Once we click that, it will change how that image works. So it brought it forward on top of some of these other ones, but it didn't work for this one. So we can click that fake looking apple and we can say send backwards. So bringing forward, sending backwards allows you to change how your images are layered on top of each other. Maybe not so relevant if you're doing an actual talk presentation, but if you're making a poster for a conference, and you have charts and you have graphs and you have images, maybe logos, layering them with that bring forward, send backwards is something that can make your life a bit easier.
So you're talking about making posters. Can you change the dimensions of the slide?
Yes, you can. So the way to change the slide dimension is, let me see, from the home page. Let me see. I'd made a note, but I think I had removed it. Under the Design tab, if you go under Slide Size, which is under the Customize, it's kind of to the right of all of the different options. That's where you can go under Custom Slide Size. It's really teeny, sorry about that, but that's where you can choose your width and your height. And usually if you're going to print a poster, I know that the University of Idaho's our copy center specifies what those dimensions have to be. And our library website also, from our homepage, if you go under Research Guides and scroll down under How To, we have a guide on poster presentations. And this gives some guidance on how to use PowerPoint to create a poster. And I believe, yep, if you click on creating your poster, it gives you the margin size that the printing services need to print it to that standard poster size. So that's where you would go to change it so that it would be able to be printed and used at a conference.
For the UI branding PowerPoints that you can download online, can you edit those like text? Usually when I've never even tried it.
Yes.
I've just done all the same, but you can change everything on there as well.
Yes.
So you can make the size different.
Exactly. So let's see, University of Idaho brand PowerPoints. Yes, so the University of Idaho's Brand Resource Center does have PowerPoint templates that you can download that have that university branding and the logos.
Do they have any historical ones anywhere? I hate the new ones.
I don't think we're allowed to use historical ones. I think if you're going to use them, you have to use the newest ones.
No problem. Just curious. So I guess that was my question, was if you're using one of their branding templates for like a university thing,
Yeah.
can we edit them from what they look like there, or do we have to start from scratch? Like, will branding get mad at us?
So branding's going to control color, font, but you can edit it. I mean, you can, if you don't like the bullets, they have
The
little eye
bullets are
bullets.
terrible.
You can take the little eye bullets out, but they just don't want you to change the colors or the
So we can't
logos.
We have to stay with our two.
No, I know
Like, I
he's
think
more
they said there
certain.
was like 3 fonts we can use.
There's not a brand based on fonts for presentations, but for those of us who have to do external presentations, like the board, right? We do the US is the same. Or if we're going to be printing them, so we're going to do posters and we're going to present them, then if that matters, but not.
But as far as the masters, you can change shapes and stuff. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so right now,
Change the colors or
Yeah.
yeah, the colors and the logos are the main thing. And from that Brand Resource Center, that's where you can download the different logos. A lot of departments have their own logos, so you could put that on a presentation. But you can easily change the a bullet point either in Slide Master or by coming right here once you have a bullet point. If we go under the Home tab, we can see that bullets are selected. We could click the drop down and specify changing it. We can even define our own bullet if we wanted to. We could customize it. Maybe we, for some reason, want 2 arrows. We can change that and change our bullet points. And so like you said, if you do download the University of Idaho PowerPoints, they have little eyes, which don't line up sometimes with your text and can be a bit distracting. So you can always change it to a normal bullet point, to a dash. And what's great is the University of Idaho, their brand toolkit also specifies, once you dig into it, the actual kind of breakdown for the numbers you'd have to enter to get the university approved brand colors. So you could make sure that your bullets or your text matches the actual gold or other colors that the university uses if you're concerned about that. Okay, So as the Save As options, they're less relevant in Excel. In Word, if you can always save your document. You can do it as a Word document, but you can also save them as PDFs. You can save them as RTF, rich text format, which allows it to be opened in other programs. What's really great in PowerPoint, especially if you're thinking of using a PowerPoint presentation to do a video tutorial or something where you don't think you're going to be on a computer, maybe where PowerPoint will be readable, is if you click File and go under Export, you can, if you then click Change File Type, you can save each slide as an individual JPEG or a PNG file. So you could save each slide as image files, which you could then upload into a video tutorial or some other format. Under that Save As, that's where you can choose the template. You could choose older versions of PowerPoint if you needed to. One of the other options as well, I've never used this, but when I was researching for this session, if you choose PowerPoint Show instead of a PowerPoint presentation, the PowerPoint Show option, if we were to choose this, will allow us, as soon as we open our awesome Apple presentation, it opens it right to present mode. So if you're going to a conference and you don't want, all of your slides on the side and kind of that editing view, if you save it as a PowerPoint show, it'll open right into the slideshow format.
And so the only options you have here are just advanced and.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you can't edit this within that file format. So that's something to do once your PowerPoint is exactly where you want it.
Save as, save it as a PowerPoint show.
You can do the same, yep,
Oh,
so,
export, sorry.
well, export is if you want to save it as a different file type, like an
Okay,
image.
yeah, okay.
If you want to do the PowerPoint presentation or the PowerPoint show, you go Save As, Browse, and that's where you would choose PowerPoint
So
show.
you can have 2 copies, one for yourself, one for.
Yes, yes. So I would suggest save it as just your regular PowerPoint presentation as you're doing editing. Once you're ready to present it, choose PowerPoint show. Okay. As with all of the tools, there's always a spell check feature. It's usually listed under review. You can spell check your PowerPoints. You can spell check in Excel. You can spell check in Word if that's something you need to do. And so that's all that I have. Let me just show you really quick. Coming up, let's see, I want to make sure that my screen is still shared. Coming up next week is our session on scholarly presence. This is going to focus on how you all as scholars, researchers, as students can really find ways to make your work more visible. We're going to be talking about ORCID IDs, creating author profiles, different ways to keep track of the impact of your work and research. And then we're going to have a citation management session, as well as organizing your research and data management. So we're going to have snacks at each session. Next week, we're going to have bagels from Einstein again. So please come, sign up, register so that you can get a spot, or register and choose Zoom if you prefer that option. I'll be around, so if you have questions, feel free to come up, and thank you all for coming today.
Okay, I've been doing the same thing. You can see mine is so much further than yours every time I lean over.